Welcome to another edition of the SprintCarLimited.com Deep Dive presented by EnTrust IT Solutions. Joining us on the show this week is Tye Wolfgang, the new crew chief for Brad Sweet at Kasey Kahne Racing. Before we get to Tye, don't forget to check out EnTrust IT Solutions. EnTrust is a full-service technology company serving small and mid-sized businesses in New York, Pennsylvania, and surrounding areas. The staff at EnTrust IT Solutions takes a personalized approach to technology. See why customers are choosing EnTrust IT Solutions as their technology partner by scheduling a free consultation at www.entrust-msp.com or by calling 717-292-8868. Now here's Tye. Tye, welcome to the deep dive. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I didn't figure I was going to get out of this once Eric did it, that snowballed, and then Joe got on there, and I talk a lot more than both them, so that kind of means I had to do it.
You know, Joe's that's what Joe said. If Eric did it, I guess I have to do it. So
Exactly. He put the pressure on us.
yeah. Well, no, I think you moving into your new position, which I gotta say, I didn't know this many people liked you. There's
I didn't either.
you know, but no, it was good to see from my standpoint. Obviously, if people missed it, Tye, you're taking over as Brad Sweet's crew chief. I like it because I know there's a shortage of crew guys in this sport, and I think it goes kind of unnoticed, especially young guys. So we'll get to that, a little later in the show. But I want to start out. You've been in this a while. I mean, I think 16 you started on the crew side. When did you get involved, or I should say, when did you kind of get introduced to dirt track racing? Were you really young with your parents, or is it something you just saw somewhere and you decided to go? How did that kind of develop?
I've just always been pretty involved. I think I was probably, I don't know, 6 months old, if I had to guess, when I ended up at my first race. So on my mom's side of the family, my on her dad's side, so my grandfather's side, that side of the family owned a coal business back in the day, and they were involved in Jim Nace's racing back in the day at Sealands Grove and all that with Bulldog Coal Company and such. And little, I'm sure we'll get there, but that's how I ended up with Colby Wolmer later in the things, because not a lot of people know Colby Wolmer is actually Jim Nace's nephew. So
Okay.
there's a family connection there. And then even once obviously the coal business and stuff kind of moved out of the area and whatnot, they just stayed involved in racing. My grandparents, my mom, my uncles, my mom's whole side of the family's into it. And then I don't know how this happened, but my dad is actually a stock car and late model guy. He was a crew guy on stock cars and late models all through high school, and then kind of got very busy with work and stuff for a period. That's life. He was very high up in Pennsylvania's EMS services and things, like working for the state of Pennsylvania, and kind of got out of it. Then about the same time that I got started sprint car racing, he was back working on some late model stuff. And we, to this day, when we have our racing discussions, still go through that battle together. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, just kind of always around it. My cousin on my mom's side raced 305s. Like there was just always race cars around.
Well, you can tell them that sprint car racing is the top fuel of dirt track racing. There you go. It's an old Lee
I'm
Stauffer line.
I'm sure he'll watch this, and about at this point he'll be laughing already. So
So I believe it was 16 was your first gig with Colby Walmer. Is that
uh I was 16 when I went full time with Brock. I was
okay?
probably 14 or 15, I think, when I started helping like consistently. Like I didn't have a driver's license yet. Like I was getting rides to and from the shop and figuring out how to bum a ride in the truck with somebody, and then just get close enough to home to get back home and that kind of stuff. So yeah, probably 14, and then 16 I was full time.
So the Colby Walmer deal, I know when we did this story on sprintcarunlimited.com, you mentioned you couldn't even mount tires. Like you were green.
Yeah.
What was that original experience like? And was it at that, and we'll get to it, but was there a point during that where you realized you wanted to do this full time? This was what you wanted your living to be? And what was kind of the turning point there for before you went with Brock when you were 16?
Uh, so like I said, I've kind of hung out with my cousin and stuff when he was 305 racing and we did that deal. And then I think it was probably before I went to Kobe, I'm like, yo, this is a pretty good deal. Like I like this sprint car deal and just kind of worked out. Like he was racing a lot with Solutions Aqua and that team at that time, like doing the whole Patriot thing and 360 racing was
Yep.
still pretty popular in PA, New York. So we were traveling a lot and he kind of needed somebody that could be there all the time, but was not in a position to go and fund a salary of somebody that was established. And we kind of just worked out a deal. I think him and Justin from Solutions Aqua, they're paying me like 200 or 250 bucks a week. Like as a, I was just in junior high school and high school, and that was awesome to me, right? Like that was better than working at McDonald's. So it just showed up there and he was like really patient. He was a great teacher. He just took his time and it worked out in the sense that I wanted to do it and he needed somebody and it just kind of was the best case that he was going to have a set of hands all the time and I was a willing to learn set of hands, you know.
Why didn't you ever become a driver? Why did you go this direction as opposed to driving? Is I mean, obviously it's cheaper to be a crew guy than a
Yeah.
if you're starting your own deal. But I asked that to a lot of crew guys. Why did you go this direction?
I never wanted to drive. I never had an interest in it. If I would have, when I had my own stuff, I probably would have drove it myself. And I never went that direction. I just didn't want to. I like the mechanical side of things. I like working on stuff. I like machining parts. Like nothing gives me more satisfaction than putting some of your own touches on something and putting it together and then watching it go around the racetrack.
So you end up with Brock Zierfoss and
Yep.
Shane Bowers was there. And
Yep.
I think now I've tried to get Shane on and he declined. He
Good luck.
hates, yeah, that's probably the toughest one. And I'm still gonna try. I'm dedicated like that. And but I don't think people realize what Shane has accomplished in his career. I mean, he was with Jason Myers when he won World of Outlaw titles. Obviously, he was with Brian Clausen. He was with Brock, and obviously, we see what he's doing today
Yeah.
with the 14 car. But what was it like for you going from Colby to Brock, which was a professional team with a hired professional crew chief who had a really good resume under him?
Yeah, it was a massive learning curve, but thankfully Noisy Shane is pretty similar to the things I was describing with Colby in that regard. Like he's a very reserved guy. He was extremely patient and worked with me and they were just beginning to elevate Brock's team from the regional scene to a more national level. And we're kind of again in a position where hey, we need somebody, but we can't just go get three full-time guys and it just kind of worked out that they needed an entry level guy and it was nerve-wracking. I think the first night that I raced with them, if I remember right, was at Ocala for the All-Star shows when they
Yep.
still went there. And definitely felt a little bit I felt a little bit out of place for a while, but I wouldn't say that I was ever uncomfortable. Like I enjoy the challenge of being the least qualified or least experienced, like trying to elevate yourself to another level, I think is a good thing and not just motorsports, but life in general.
Would you say you learned more there, or I should say, you know, came a greater distance there than maybe anywhere else?
Oh, absolutely. I, he took me from the level where I could have probably been hanging out with my buddies at Port Royal every Saturday night working on somebody's stuff there just on the weekends to the point where I was in a position that hopefully will allow me to do this for a long time to come. Like he took me, I don't want to say A to B, but more B to C faster than I think anybody else could have.
And what was the biggest thing you learned there? I mean, if you could, I mean, there obviously the list is long,
Yep.
But what was, if you could point to one thing, what was the biggest thing you learned under Shane Bowers?
How to manage the environment, I would say. He taught me how to balance racing on the road versus home life and the hours that you're going to work and when you need to be extremely serious and focused and put in those long days versus when it's okay to take a little reset and that kind of thing. I was pretty young. I was pretty green. I like to get at that time I like to get home a lot more than I do now just because I had never been away from home, been away from family, been away from my brother, that kind of stuff. And he really showed me how to balance this industry with the mental side of it and the just sort of the aspects of that we deal with that a lot of people probably don't understand that crew guys experience being away from home and the amount of hours you do work and all that. And I'm not complaining, but there's definitely an adjustment there from going to school every day to doing that. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, we're going to get into that. Where did you go from for after Brock? Did you end up, where was it, in the Midwest?
Yeah. So I, at that time, I had a 360 engine and one car that I had been saving up for since I started working for Colby. I just always kind of had this bucket list thing that I wanted to have my own race car and um, put that together and went for a couple weeks and raced with Colby and just did that deal for a couple weeks. And then a guy by the name of Sean Rahal, who was a pretty established pavement racer at that time, was looking to start his own sprint car team. And he kind of called me and was like, "Hey, we basically have cars and parts and a couple engines sitting here, but don't really have anybody to put the stuff together." And I didn't know what I wanted to do at that time, so I just told him, I said, "I'll come up for a couple weeks." I was like, "I'll put your stuff together and we'll go race a couple times and just see where it goes from there." And they were based right there by Road America in Wisconsin.
Yep.
So went up there for, I don't know, it was probably 6 weeks through the summer and just put his stuff together and just got that to where it was manageable. And, we had never made an agreement to really race long term or anything like that. We just got him going and took him racing a couple times. And at that point, I was like, okay, well, I guess I do want to still race. So I need to get something solid lined up. And I went to work for Brian Brown for the latter half of that season, just finished that year with him. He needed some help just getting, that was around Knoxville time, a couple weeks before the Nationals. Just kind of did that deal with him for the rest of that season, then ended up here at KKR.
Yeah. When was that transition over to Brown and then to KKR? What year was that?
Uh, 22, maybe something like that. No, yeah, 22.
Now you worked under Danny Lasoski for a little. Now I know Danny.
Yeah,
Danny's something. Like,
yeah, the
what
character.
was it like working for Danny Lasoski? Because you're gonna get the truth, meaning you're gonna get how he feels.
Yeah, Danny and I actually, I felt like had a very, very good relationship. He's very hard nosed, and when he sees this, he'll probably text me and give me a little crap that that's how I worded it, and tell me I hurt the one feeling he has left, and all that
There's
good
no
stuff.
feelings there.
And no, but dude is an extremely smart individual. He helped me so much with just like translating between what the race cars are doing and the driver's doing to make the race car appear the way it's appearing and that kind of stuff. And I wasn't really there that long. Like I said, I think it was like end of 21 or half of 22. I don't exactly remember what the year is without looking. It was probably a 6 month time period. And but learned a lot in that time. And his passion for this sport to this day probably still outweighs most of the guys that you see showing up with their helmet bag on the weekends. It's pretty neat to see.
I know he's a no nonsense guy, and I think from my perspective, I like that. Uh,
Yep.
Even with me when we talk, I get the truth, and as far as how how he sees it, and I agree. I mean, every place he's gone, I think they've gotten quicker.
Yeah, 100%. He just has a we're gonna figure it out mentality. Like you don't get to make an excuse with Danny Lasoski. It's cut and dry.
No.
It was either this is right or that's wrong, and you either did it right or you screwed it up. And I think his zero tolerance for slacking off and that kind of things just really elevates anything that he's involved in.
Yeah, I agree. So how do you end up at KKR? I mean, because you, which again, we're going to get into a lot of stuff after kind of where we get you to the point where you are now. But how do you end up at KKR with Kasey Kahne?
So I had always been friends inadvertently. I don't even really know how it started with a lot of the guys that worked here. Noisy and Eric Prutzman had been extremely close because they spent so much time at TSR together. So through Noisy, I met Eric, and then Andrew was 360 racing with a kid from New York named Joe Trenka at the same
Yep.
time that I was 360 racing with Colby. So I knew Andrew from the 360 stuff, and Rob Beatty, who was here on the 9 at the time. Everybody knows Rob, Bob, whatever. That's how the pit area knows him, and was friends with him and that kind of deal. And just I wasn't happy with where I was at. We just went through it, was kind of bouncing around, not really sure 100% what I wanted. And there was just, I guess I'll call it some personality differences at Browns. And I just felt like I could elevate my career by making a change. And I just called Justin Adams, and who was managing everything here. And I'm like, hey, like, I want to race. I'm pretty passionate about this, but I'm not happy with where I'm at. If if you need a reference, call Noisy. I was like, anything other than that, that's what you got. Like with me, it's pretty pretty straightforward. Like everyone kind of knows what they're getting.
So you go to Williams Grove, I mean, I don't know if it was a trial run or what, but over the weekend, that particular weekend, I believe you said it was the Summer Nationals.
Yeah. Um, it was either the Summer Nationals or the May race. I'd have to look. It doesn't matter. It was a 2-day outlaw deal at Williams Grove. And basically what happened was I called Justin, told him I wanted to do that, and he said, we'll call you back in the morning. And Kasey himself actually called me that morning and was like, hey, like kind of, we've never talked, but kind of know who you are just from Noisy. And we'd say hello when we'd pass each other or whatever. I'd be down there talking to his guys and say hello. And he's like, I think it's a good idea. And at that time, Grant Boyum was the only other guy that he had working on his car because he had just come back from an injury. So he's like, we should do this. He's like, just if you want to do it, he's like, come to Williams Grove this weekend. He's like, you can start there. And that was my super formal interview to get to Kasey Kahne Racing. And I loaded my car up and I drove from there to the Grove, and I haven't left yet. When I showed up there, we hadn't really talked about anything. It was just, I want to go back and finish the outlaw deal, and I need a guy to do it, and you're our guy, and we'll see you Friday type of deal. And I drove there on Friday and met them there.
Look, it might have helped that you didn't talk about the particulars. I think sometimes kids, and you're to me again, I'm double your age, so uh, and then some. I think sometimes kids get caught up in details and it turns people off. Where you kind of showed up and just went to work, and you worried about all the minutia later, the pay and everything else. I think I probably played into your hands. I don't know for sure, but so you're with Kasey then. How do you end up with Brad?
So I raced the rest of that season with Kasey, and kind of took on some more responsibility as the year went. Grant is a great dude, still one of my better friends. We talk on the phone a lot, but he was getting ready to sort of phase out of racing, I think. And probably a couple months left in the year, he's like, hey, there was stuff. He's like, if you want to just start doing this, he's like, you might as well start to learn it because you're going to be doing this a little bit longer than me. So started doing that stuff, and I guess they thought I did an okay job. And at the end of that year, we were at Port Royal for the Outlaw Show, and I had some stuff outside of racing going on, and it was just kind of a little rattled and whatnot. And as kids probably were, I think I was 20 or 21 at that time. And Eric pulled me aside and he's like, hey, he's like, I need you to do me a favor. I'm like, okay. He's like, I just need you to reel it in and focus a little bit. He's like, I just was informed that Joe Mooney is going to be moving on at the end of the year. I'm like, okay. And I didn't know what he was getting at. And then he's like, I just kind of must have had a bleak look on my face. He's like, I need you to reel it in. We need to talk when we get home. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, I got it. It was kind of one of them deals. Like anybody that knows Eric and I's relationship will understand what I'm saying, you know.
Yeah.
My first day here, you talking about that Friday at Williams Grove, I'll clean it up, but I'm walking in the pits carrying my backpack and a suitcase and I'm gonna throw in the trailer because that's how I'm gonna roll out. And Eric steps off the back door of the 49 trailer and looks at me and in a roundabout way says, "Oh, great, this guy's here," and starts laughing and just walks back up in the trailer.
Yeah, I know. I've kind of busted your nuts a little bit with Eric and stuff. It seems like you guys have a really good relationship, and we're gonna get to that before. Okay, so you go to Sweet, you have all this success, and but I've talked to you over the last probably 2 years, I would say, and that's when you started talking about being a crew chief.
Yep.
And you even said to me, and I think I can say it now, is, hey, I I got to decide if I'm going to be a crew chief, where that's going to be, and if not, do something else.
Yep.
Uh, so you end up this year CJB.
Yep.
You're going to be the crew chief.
Yep.
Not the worst kept secret in sprint car racing, but because you're a crew guy. But what happened? What happened that now you are a crew chief for a 6-time champion, 5-time World of Outlaw champion, 84 wins in the last, 7 years with a series? I mean, there's some huge numbers. How do you go from being at CJB for not even 10 minutes and then going to end up where you are today?
Well, first off, thanks for reminding me of all the stats that we're supposed to match. I
Oh, I'm
appreciate.
going to remind you again.
Yeah, I appreciate that. No, so basically, when I came to KKR, and even over the last couple years, I've openly had discussions that this is what I want to do for a living, and to put yourself in a position to make a. I'm not saying you can't do it as a car guy, but to make a suitable living long term, you need to progress the ladder, right? You
Mhm.
if you go work in a business, you don't want to be sweeping the floors for 25 years. You want to progress the ladder. And that was something that I felt like I was ready to do or wanting to do, I should say. Not necessarily, I don't know that you're ever ready, but wanting to do. And the CJB thing kind of arose on the West Coast and we had made plans to go that direction. And, I was fully prepared to go that direction. And just last minute, a few things um, over there and over here changed. And it was, again, no hard feelings on my end towards anybody. It was not a bad deal like that or anything. It just, when things changed over there and changed over here, it just sort of opened the door for me to have to pump the brakes for a second and evaluate what I wanted to do. And that just led to a casual conversation with Brad turned conversation with Kasey and the 150th conversation with Eric. We spent a lot of time together riding up and down the road in the truck, just talking and that whatnot, and got back to the shop and ended up being like, hey, we should sit down and talk about all this real quick. And that's when I was um, basically offered the opportunity to take the 49 role because Eric is moving over to more of a team manager role and to be the crew chief on the 9. It just kind of, it all spiraled pretty quick, but just a chain reaction of events sort of I guess led to this. I don't know if it was a perfect storm or the inverse of that, whatever you want to call it, but that's how it went. It just kind of spiraled.
So now we're going to get into the tough stuff.
Okay.
I let you go for a while. Um, I always say there's a KKR way. I
Yep.
know Eric kind of said, I don't know about that. No, there is. Okay. So what compare KKR to all the other places that you have worked? Um, it is different, very successful. I think it's very regimented too, the way you got it's run. And I think that starts at the top with Kasey. I think he demands excellence and not in a bad way, but hey, there's expectations. So compare working where you are now to whether it's you worked other places or what you've seen in this business. It's different.
Yeah. Our preparation, I would say, is just at another level. I don't necessarily want to go into the details on all that
Well,
stuff
no, you
because
don't have to.
everybody takes notes on those sorts of things, but the level of preparation here just far exceeds anything else that I've ever seen. The level that you're expected to prepare things and operate at just exceeds what I feel is the industry standard. I just think that that's a product of Kasey being very hands-on as an owner. A lot of people probably don't know that that guy's in the shop with us pretty much every day. Like I don't know if I could count on, you know, one hand, or it wouldn't fill a hand, I should say, how many times I've been here and not seen him in a day when I'm working. He's always here just checking in, and it's never in a micromanaging way. Like he's just very involved in his race teams, and if there's anything he can do to help you be better, he is the first guy to offer that up. So I think that helps.
So obviously, you've done this at some pretty influential ages,
Yep.
16 to 23, which you are now. And, look, when I was 21, I was different than I am now.
Yep.
And you're going through all these life changes. And you even said, Eric had to look at you and say, I need you to focus. Has being a KKR kind of changed who you are as a person? Maybe you're not as boisterous as you were before, because I've known you a while now, and you're different at KKR than maybe some other places. And I have to wonder hey, you're in the big leagues now. Like it's different. It's about growing up, that general progression to adulthood, so to speak.
Yeah. Some of that's probably an age thing. I think just everybody matures a little bit, and
Yeah,
old
hope. Yes.
old pictures pop up, and I saw a victory lane photo the other day from the back in the 70 days with Brock, and my hair was down to my shoulders, and I'm like, gosh, like what was I doing? And that type of deal. But I think some of it's just growing up, and then some of it is the mentors that surround you at this place. Like Justin Adams was here my first 2 years here and has been here off and on this year, and he's an intense wrestling coach, father figure type of person. Um, can give some great life advice. Kasey's name, obviously, you want to represent that well because his name is a brand, not just a name. So representing that professionally is important. And then, Eric is very mild mannered when when we're in public. I can get him talking when it's just us. He won't admit that, but I can get him to talk. Um, and that helps a lot too. He's very good about keeping his finger on the pulse and not letting the ropes get too far. And he won't ever let you hang yourself. And I think those types of mentors help a lot.
I always called Justin Adams, and him and I joke a lot about what his role is or was. I always
Yep.
called him the fixer.
Yeah.
You don't want Justin to have to come down and visit you on a Monday.
No.
And now Eric's going into that role. Now, from your standpoint, to me, Eric Prutzman is the first ballot Hall of Famer. He's 44 now. When he turns 50, they better be putting him in. or I'll have
Yep.
to write something again. But how much has he meant for your career and really your progression as a person, like I was talking about earlier, into adulthood?
Eric has probably been harder on me personally in both my career and personal life than anybody else I've ever been around. And I would say 99% of it is with good intentions, and the other 1% is when we're watching football.
Well,
But
I can understand that.
um, no, it's Eric has taken me to a different level. And I think that it's okay to say that because we can look back and this probably isn't the first time. Like if I had to guess, like Joe Mooney would probably agree with me or made similar comments that Eric took his career to another level. And that's something that is pretty we openly talk about, right? Like he's at the point where he's kind of like, hey, I can take on trying to make somebody my project, right? And the fact that he was willing to sort of do that with Joe and myself is very it's very humbling because he could have chosen anybody. And the fact that he chose to put some effort into ensuring that I could continue to succeed in this sport means a lot.
I did a 90 at 9 the other day, and I was talking about the shuffling at KKR, and I thought it was a good move because I know KKR, being around as long as I have since the inception of KKR. Uh, you guys seem to promote from within, and when you don't, you find the right guys to fit your mold.
Yeah.
So I thought this was the best move possible, not only for you and Eric, but for the organization as a whole. It's continuity, it's familiarity, it's knowing the program, the program. How important is that to the success of a team from your standpoint going into this new role?
Oh, I think it's very vital. Obviously with us running a two-car operation, there is six crew guys here instead of the standard three, which means six personalities, six opinions, all that stuff. And we haven't even talked about, management and the driver and all that. On any given day, we can have eight or 10 opinions being thrown into a hat, just keeping everything pretty neutral and making sure that you can portray your opinion in a sense that doesn't irritate or arouse somebody else. Like that's good. Like the camaraderie that we have here keeps this deal oiled and running smooth. There right now, I need to fill a spot on the 49 yet, but we have five guys on the shop floor. And then, Kasey's around and Brad's out in California, but picks up the phone and you can reach him anytime you got a question or need him, however that may be. But there's not a single guy in this building right now that I wouldn't go to lunch with or go hang out with on the weekends or whatever. Andrew Bowman's back. I worked with him on the 49 car.
Yep.
Great dude. Owe him an apology. Was supposed to be in his wedding, and I'm actually going to be in Australia. So, but that shows how close we are. Tate, they just brought Tate in this year at Eldora. He's a great kid. Been very fortunate to actually take some of what Eric and other guys in my career have taught me and really helped Tate step into the car chief role on the nine. And I feel like, not to pat myself on the back, but I think I've been able to help him elevate to the level that he needs to be at to make sure that Kasey's stuff's operating well. And that's really rewarding to be able to take that and help him. And he's super receptive of that. And Zane Jackson, who, hasn't gotten much credit and nobody's talked about him and all this, but I did get confirmation this week. I'm going to be bringing Zane back to be the tire specialist on the 49 again. So definitely want to just tell everybody that, he is a big part of this too. His attitude, his demeanor is phenomenal. That keeps everybody smiling and lighthearted in our trailer. And, when he showed up here, he was green. And I can say that because we've been friends since high school and he would agree with me. Brad would tell you, Eric would tell you. By the end of the year, we had a role guy. Like he was just in his role and just does his thing and you know what you got. So that coming back is a big weight off my shoulders, knowing that I've got one guy that's just going to come in, fill his role, do his thing. You don't have to worry about that. That's comforting as well. So it's just about keeping everybody happy.
I remember when Brad Sweet won his first Kings Royal
Yep.
years ago in the Ollie's car. And the Brad Sweet I see now is significantly different. I think I would say more intense. I would say obviously more polished as a driver. And that's, without question.
Yep.
Um, what's it like working with Brad Sweet from your standpoint? I mean, I think people don't understand Brad a lot. Just, and I have the luxury of talking to guys and making phone calls and stuff, but I think he's misunderstood a little bit. What's it like if you can kind of give us a little bit of a glimpse into Brad? What's it like working for him?
So I always feel like Brad is misunderstood, sort of in a similar way that Donnie has been in the past. People associate them as unapproachable or not personable and this and that. And that's not really the case with Brad. It's just Brad is serious about sprint car racing. When he's racing, when it's race car driver Brad, like he's focused on being race car driver Brad, and he's serious about that. And during the week when he's, booking race dates and he's got the promoter hat on, like he is serious about promoting the sport of sprint car racing. And when he's in a conversation about elevating the sport, like it can get heated. Like he is serious about sprint car racing. There is no doubt about that. He is very passionate. Um, there's there's still nights to this day, like he'll get vocal when he's passionate about what he thinks the car needs or what he wants to do and this and that. And, doesn't mean he's right or wrong or we're right or wrong or whatever the case may be. It doesn't matter, but he's passionate about winning and he's passionate about the sport as a whole, and I would definitely say that things I've seen in the past to now, he's a bit more calmer. Um, we get we get the luxury of hanging out with Savvy. He brings Rachel and Savvy out, and that's super cool. I kind of she's got a soft spot in everybody's heart, but I definitely enjoy when they're out and just feeling a part of their family. Don shows up, and that's Brad's dad for everyone that doesn't know. And he is real quick to let us know when our car's no good. And he's even faster to tell Brad when Brad's not performing as he should. And Don's cool in that regard, man. He keeps it real. And Brad definitely has some of that in him. He tries to reel it in.
So I don't know if you realize it, but last 7 years, 74 wins, 10 with high limit, six
Hey.
titles. Um, has that sunk in yet? And the role you're taking? I mean, it's a fair question. I mean, you're 23. Um, that's a lot on your shoulders. I think. I mean, not that you're not ready for it. I mean, and honestly, in sprint car racing, I've seen this before with other crew chiefs. Look, you got to be thrown in. Eric Prutzman had to be thrown in.
Yep.
Joe Mooney thrown in. So it's just the nature of the beast. But have you sat down and thought about that and what that's going to be like, once this season starts? And also, Tye, when you're the crew chief, you have more of a target on you. If you're a car chief or a tire guy, the public doesn't really look at you as much. If Brad doesn't do as well, you're going to catch some of that. Have you thought about all that?
It's an extremely valid question. It's a very good question. The numbers, I don't necessarily care about. I have a very great respect for those numbers and what they've done.
Well, you've
Uh,
been part of them.
yeah, exactly. But numbers are past seasons. I can only control what's going to happen in 2025, right? So I'm just kind of looking at what do I have to do to keep this car performing at the level that it's expected to perform at. And as far as the outside noise, there's probably not a guy in the pit area quicker to shut down outside noise or come flying off the mule seat and tell somebody that they need to mind their own business than Brad Sweet. I've seen it a few times, and
Really?
and I know that if we're struggling, like we will fix it in-house in KKR.
Yep.
Hopefully in our trailer. But if not, we'll be able to lean on Eric a little bit. And I got a lot of confidence in the fact that if this isn't what Brad Sweet and Kasey and Eric wanted, this isn't what we would be doing. And in case you haven't noticed over the past year, Brad Sweet's a pretty all-in guy. So
That's
um,
mildly.
I got a text from Brad the other night, and the gist of it is like he's all in, like we're going racing together. There was a lot of nice words in there and great respect for everything that him and Eric have done, and they have a great relationship. But like we put the back door down at Volusia, like we just got to figure it out. Like it's just the 49 against whoever else signs in that night, and the rest doesn't really matter.
I always, there obviously with any situation, there's going to be some growing pains. I mean, that's obvious. Um, I think one of the things, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think one of the things that helps again goes back to that thing where you guys promoted from within. Eric's in the stall next to you.
Yep.
If you have a question, obviously, I think he's going to let you do, you know, what you need to do. But again, nobody's going to let the other team hang. I think if something's going on at Kasey's, I think you guys will jump in and help, so on and so forth. So that's got to be quite a relief that, hey, everybody's in this for the long haul. Everybody knows has been through this before when Eric became the crew chief. Uh, does that kind of make you, I guess, sleep better at night knowing just how this has all transpired? Everybody's still there, and it allows you to kind of grow into your role.
Yeah, it's a peace of mind. Eric's the type of person like he's gonna let me screw up. Like there's no doubt about that. But he's not gonna let us fall off the cliff. If
Mhm.
it gets to a point where I feel like I need to go to him with some questions, I know that he'll be there, you know? And you may not always get the answer directly out of him that you were thinking you were going to get, but he will give you the information to find the answer to that question on your own. And that's big. Just being able to go through that learning curve with somebody to sort of keep you within the parameters. He's going to let you bounce around a little bit and sit over there and smirk and think in his head that, oh, you're dumb, I wouldn't have done that or whatever, but he'll keep you within the parameters, and that's comforting. And like it's underrated how much Kasey cares about the mechanical side of this stuff. Nobody talks about it. But over the past couple of years, like Kasey's worked on his own stuff quite a bit. Like he's been his own crew chief for an extended period of time. He's really good with shocks, um, you know, technical questions. He's a great feedback guy. Like if there's something that he's tried and you're thinking about it, like he can tell you exactly what it did, where it did it, what date he did it, and why it felt like this, and what the color of the clouds were that day. I mean, his information reciting is incredible. And some of that probably stems from cup days, like the feedback and
Yep.
the repetitiveness of testing and all that. So Kasey's a great asset to this program, not just as an owner. Everyone talks about Kasey Kahne, the owner, but him as a driver and as a mechanic, are just as equally as important to this deal, I feel like is anything else. When I worked on Casey's car, there was nights I was thinking we should go down this path, and he'd come in and tell you that, hey, this is what I felt and this and that, and right, wrong, and different. Like, you know, no one makes the perfect decision 100% of the times. And he's the first guy to say, oh, I tried that and it didn't feel right. Like, or I did this and it felt like this, and that's a direction we need to look. Like he's very vital in that regard too. So it's just having depth of our program. Even Rob and Mario Capetta that do our engines. Eric's got Rob on speed dial, and I got both their phone numbers, and we can pick the phone up and call and talk to them at any times with engine questions or this or that. And Brad talks to Willie a lot and knows what's going on over there, and Jeff up at Wing Dynamics, and we can talk to him all we want. And the guys that build our parts, I feel like we have very good relationships with most of our manufacturers. Dan at Maxim, don't want to forget him. Eric and I just went out and saw him, and they're just really great resources to have sort of in your intellectual toolbox, I guess.
So I'm going to shift to some things in the sport. So now
Yep.
you made it through the hard part. Um,
Good. I was sweating.
So is there a lack of crew? Is a big problem in this sport a lack of crew guys? I've said this for a while. We don't we just need more crew guys, to travel up and down the road. It seems like teams are looking for guys every year. Look at JJR at the beginning of the year. We're looking for a couple guys, so on and so forth. Does this sport have a crew guy problem where there just aren't a lot of guys who want to travel up and down the road anymore to do this?
It's brutal. Everything you just said is accurate, but an understatement.
Hmm.
It's nobody understands how difficult it is. It's hands down the hardest part right now. Um, there is, I bet you I can name 15 job openings that are either public knowledge or are about to be public knowledge, just that I know of. And I probably got three names that I can think of people that will be looking to fill those. And that's just off the top of
Yeah.
my head. So, that shows the lack of able and or willing participants, I guess. Eric and I had this discussion the other night in the truck driving back from Springfield. I've been saying for 5 or 6 years now, or whatever it's been, that I'm the youngest guy in the pit area, right? I'm like, this is
Yeah.
weird. I'm the youngest guy on the road. And minus a couple new faces here or there, I can think off the top of my head, like Balin over at the 26 car, like he's young kid, wants to do this. That's awesome for those guys. But Tate now on the 9, and after that, I'm already running out of examples to give you of people that are younger than myself. And I'm sure I missed a couple guys that are probably even my buddies, and they're gonna text me and be like, thanks for the shout out, man. But the gist of that is that there is not a lot of youth in the pit area. And I think you're seeing that with instances like our own. Like somebody my age, probably 10 years ago, wouldn't have gotten the opportunity that's been presented to myself right now. But the age range and who is the most experienced guy has shifted from probably 30 to 25 or whatever the case may be, just because for whatever reason, guys don't last as long in the sport. Not as many new people come in. If they do come in, they wasn't what they were thinking. They're gone in a year. Or they do it for a year or two and say they did it, and they move on and go do something else in life. So the being able to maintain proper levels of crew guys just through the sport as a whole is extremely difficult right now.
What is the most difficult part about being a crew member on the road with, say, High Limit or the World of Outlaws at this point?
Probably probably like the hours and the travel schedule. The 200 nights a year in a hotel room or whatever it turns out to be is not easy on anybody. And over the course of the last couple of years, the sport hasn't necessarily been in a position to raise the compensation that crew guys get to stay on pace with other industries, right? Like in the last 10 years, everything's went up in cost. Uh, the dollar menu at McDonald's isn't a dollar anymore.
No, no.
And the sport was pretty stagnant for a while in the sense of the payouts were the same, but tires cost more. Engine rebuilds cost more. The tow money was the same, but diesel fuel cost more, right? So that's less money that the owners have to spend, which means less compensation for crew guys. So now, a kid with a CDL right out of high school can go make 800 or $1,000 a week driving a delivery truck, dropping off bottled water in his hometown and sleep in his own bed every night. So there's no appeal to come do this. Now, thankfully, over the past, you know, year, year and a half, and Brad's probably smiling because he knows where this is going, but
I know where it's going.
the sport has started to elevate. And that's not a diss on the other series either, but High Limit has forced both series to elevate, right? It was a sink or swim environment for both of them. So High Limits payouts and tow and benefits and all this comes to a certain level. Now that forces the Outlaws to elevate. Well, now the Outlaws have 3 6-figure races, so High Limit needs 4. Well, now the Outlaws have 5, so High Limit needs 6. And it just across the board is driving payouts and return for the owners' investments up. which has already started to trickle down through to the very bottom guys, all the way to tire guys are starting to get taken care of a little bit better. And that's definitely not a product of our economy because we don't even need to go down that road. They're sure not helping the owners. Um, so that's just I think something that we're going to continue to see over the next couple years is both series are going to continue to grow. And I think that is a product 100% of high limit putting pressure on the entire landscape of the sport to elevate. I mean, 3 years ago, we weren't racing on Tuesday nights for 25,000 to win every week. Like it wasn't
No,
you know, and that's pretty impressive. And that breaks up the monotony of just weeks of wasted hotel rooms and diesel fuel and that kind of stuff. That helps a lot.
I've talked to the older crew guys, and they say the hardest part is the downtime on the road. You get, you're between races. Saturday you race, Sunday, Monday you maintenance or drive, and then maintenance. Tuesday you're done with most, everything, but then you have to sit and wait.
Yeah.
Is that a is I, I know some of your older school guys hated that more than anything because they just didn't know what to do.
Yeah, it's still tough, but the modern media era, I think, has helped that. And you just pick up your phone and grab an Uber and you go downtown, whatever town you're staying in, and get dinner that night and watch a baseball game or whatever it is. Technology's definitely helped with that regard, but it's still hard because spinning it back now, you just grabbed a $20 Uber and had a $40 dinner and
Yeah.
watched a $20 movie and now you spent $100. So there's a balance of financial stability versus keeping mental sanity on the road. And most people probably don't think that they correlate, but they directly do. From somebody that's on the road most of the year, they directly do because entertainment costs money. So finding ways to sort of entertain yourself there in those days is super important to everybody's morale. I would say, we fire the grill up a lot at the side of our trailer and that kind of stuff. And yeah, Eric makes fun of us and calls us kids when I pull the football out of the cabinet in the trailer. But, then me and Zane and the rest of the younger guys, we enjoy throwing that around. And, he even has talked a lot about how when you got younger guys, he had to adjust his way of looking at things a little bit. We probably roped him into going some places and doing some things this year that 2 years ago he probably wouldn't have done. But he knows that this year he was the odd man out in the sense that he had a couple 20-year-old kids working on it, and he's over here. I'm not calling him old, but I'm calling him old.
It's okay.
Different stage of life, and just keeping that balanced is pretty difficult. But I think we're starting to do a better job as a whole. 2-day, 3-day events help that because everybody's in the same area. So now you might go do something with one of your buddies that works somewhere else or whatever the case is. It just kind of having more events versus one-off weekends in the middle of nowhere definitely helps with that.
Last thing, I'm not going to ask you how long you're going to do this because, well, you're 23. So I feel you've done this the right way. You start at the bottom, locally, made your way up, kind of the general progression of basically what any business would do at this point, even in the real world. Over the last couple weeks, are you kind of pinching yourself a little bit about how far you've come from that 16-year-old guy who didn't know, couldn't mount a tire to now you're with, one of the top 2 or 3 organizations in sprint car racing with a guy who is on top of the sprint car world? I mean, has that sunk in yet?
I don't think about it unless I'm on the phone with my mom. She reminds me all the time.
Okay.
Um, she's very quick to tell me to sit back and look at the whole thing and enjoy the journey and the steps and the progression. Whereas I'm more oriented towards what I did yesterday doesn't matter. Brad Sweet's my race car driver. I got 5 cars to put together, Volusia's in 2 months. And in between
Yeah.
that time, Brad and I are going to Australia and we have 8 times to race down there. And I need to get this ordered, that ordered, this built, that built, Zane do this. Like I just go. Like I just think about the next race. Like I'm just a 1-0 type of guy. Like think about the next one, but I'm grateful. Like I don't want to sound unappreciative. The opportunities are, something that most people would definitely dream of. You know, I I have a quote that I like. It's kind of cliche, but I always say in reference that you can't be too busy chasing the dream to fail to realize that you're living it.
Mhm.
And this life is definitely something that, as hard as it is, and we probably just sounded like we were complaining about the landscape for the last 20 minutes, but we are very fortunate to get to do this. I'm very fortunate to get to do this at a high level with great equipment, great people. Um, you know, hopefully I'm able to do this for a long time yet. I know you kind of hinted at that. I don't, unlike most guys, I don't have a massive interest to do this to retirement age. I definitely think I probably got 20 years left or whatever it is, but I see a lot of fellow mechanics and things race to the point that they become negative towards the sport, and the sport then has a black mark on itself to them. And that's not something that I have an interest in. I want to race until this isn't what I think is best anymore. And obviously at my age, that's probably 10, 15, 20 years. And I'm extremely passionate about that time frame, however long that is. That's awesome. But the day that I start to question if I'm all in again or not, like I'm done. That's when I've had enough. I want to leave at that time at 40 or whatever that age is. I want to leave loving the sport that I love right now.
Mhm.
And also at a point where my my body and things physically, because the road does take a toll on you physically, will let me do some things that I sort of have on a bucket list outside of racing. My brother and I, a lot of people probably don't know this, but my brother and I are extremely passionate and devoted hunters. He gets out a lot more than I do, but we actually have gone as far as looking into like property management of
Oh,
like hunting leases and things like that, and just brainstorming. It's your brother, and him and I are only a year and a half apart in age. So I was growing up, I had a built-in best friend, right? And those are things that we want to do together, and things, trips we want to take and such like that. So definitely going to continue to give this sport everything I got until things like that start to take over. And when I can't give this sport 100%, then it's not fair of me to stick around. So that'll be the day that was enough.
well, Ty, you've earned a spot you've got, and you've come a long way. I've known you for a while now, and no, congratulations on the new digs. I shouldn't
Thank
say
you.
new digs, but new role. And
I appreciate
again, thank you very much for being on the deep dive. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much to Tye Wolfgang for joining us on the show. A lot of good stuff there. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel, and also check out our daily exclusive content at www.sprintcarunlimited.com. We'll be back next week with another edition of the Deep Dive.